How you doing, wrestling fans? And welcome to another edition of John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight podcast. We're the only wrestling podcast that brings you back 30 years with vintage audio featuring some of the biggest names of that time. The Pro Wrestling Spotlight covered all the news stories and breaking developments that happen in real time, and now we get to relive those moments right here on this podcast. Today is a sad day. We're going to review the show that aired on 1440 WNYG on September 11th, 1993, with special guests in the studio, The Powers of Pain, Warlord, and Barbarian. But the day that we're taping this episode, it's August 23rd, and we got word a few hours ago that Terry Funk passed away. And I can't begin to tell you how devastated I am because I love this man. This man was somebody that I got to know really well. 1990, he was at my first convention. I got to interview him for the first time in 1989. And a special friendship with him. He was always there. He always, he came on the show multiple times, and just a genuine person, one of the hardest workers in the wrestling business that I ever had a chance to see. And I'm just at a loss today because of how much I loved Terry Funk. Let's bring Marsh on. Hey, Marsh.
Hey, how you doing, John?
I'm really not doing that well today. And Terry was, had stages of dementia and, ill health. The last picture I saw of him, he had the NWA title in the wheelchair, and you knew that no one is here forever.
Yeah.
But it just really hit when I got the word, and I got the word in a phone call from Sunny Beach, Rick Allen, and he called from New York, and I hadn't talked to him for a while, and he said, what do you know about Terry Funk passing? And I was like, I had no idea. I had no clue. And this was literally a little over an hour ago. And so, I went online, of course, and saw the tributes pouring in, but today is a really sad day.
I had no idea until you sent that email where you mentioned it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even jump onto X or Twitter or whatever it is just to verify, because in my mind I already knew. If John's telling me, he knows.
Yeah.
And it hit me harder than I thought it would. I didn't grow up with him the same way you did, but I did grow up with him. Like my first real introduction to him was Chainsaw Charlie, which is crazy when you think about the legendary career he had before that. But it stung. It stung.
Yeah, I first saw him work. Well, I read about him in the magazines when I was a kid, obviously, and the Funk brothers and his dad, Dory Funk Sr. And I got to see him at Madison Square Garden, my very first show on August 30th. He was there with his father, rather. With Dory Sr. And he did a couple of sporadic appearances there, and I captured one or two of those on 8mm film. And I guess what we're talking about here, Marsh, is putting together a special on Terry.
Yeah.
That because he was on the show so many times.
He was a big part.
And he was always a great guest. And he was always funny, and and he shot straight from the hip, man. There was nothing, no candy coating, never really in kayfabe, except for the interview that we're going to play in the beginning of today's show, which was the first time I got to interview him. But he was always one of the best guests, and he was always great at the conventions. And getting the chance to work with him as a promoter and doing that special show in Chicago in 1995 when he caused a riot against the luchadors there with Earl Guayo hanging him, and getting to have him at my very last wrestling convention, working there, with Kevin Sullivan and the original Sheik, running in and all that craziness. Everything about Terry Funk to me was class. He was honest, never tried to hold you up for money. And just anytime I needed him to come on the show, even the very last time he appeared, which was, which we covered a few weeks back when Bruce Jacobs got him on the phone and he talked about not going to WCW. That was the last time he was on Pro Wrestling Spotlight, because I looked at all the shows that we have left and Terry was not on any of those cassettes. So, but I guess what we're planning is to do a special on him and to play some of those classic appearances that he did on Pro Wrestling Spotlight. And I'll get that 8mm footage so we can, have that for the YouTubers who watch this podcast rather than listen to it. But we will honor this guy the way he should be honored. Getting a couple of quotes, and, obviously this only happened, I found out a little bit more than an hour ago. I'll read two of them that I pulled, and one is from Ric Flair on his Twitter, and it reads, "In my entire life, I never met a guy who worked harder. Terry Funk was a great wrestler, entertainer, unbelievably fearless, and a great friend. Rest in peace, my friend Terry Funk, knowing that no one will ever replace you in the world of professional wrestling." Mick Foley, who was dear friends, best friends with Terry, idolized Terry. Their matches in Japan were classic. Mick Foley writes on his Twitter, "Terry Funk is gone. I just talked to Terry's daughter, Brandy, who gave me the awful news. He was my mentor, my idol, one of my closest friends. He was the greatest wrestler I ever saw. If you get the chance, look up a Terry Funk match or a Terry Funk promo and give thanks that this incredible man gave so much for so long to so many. There will never be another like him. May God bless Terry, his family, his friends, and all who loved him. Rest in peace, my dear friend. It was an honor to know you." And yes, anybody who knew him, it was an honor to know Terry Funk. So, Marsh, we have a clip, and I pulled this from one of the best ofs that I found really fast on our Patreon account, and figured that I'd play for everybody the very first time I interviewed Terry Funk, and it was in Baltimore. Well, not in Baltimore, it was in Philly, as they were promoting and getting ready to do the Great American Bash. And at that time, not knowing the man, it was, for me, one of the craziest interviews I ever did, because all I did was ask him a question, and he just went and did a promo, and he scared me because he was right in my face.
And intense.
It was very intense. So we'll get to that clip. We'll play it for everybody, and then we will get on with reviewing the show from 30 years ago. So why don't we play that clip of my first interview with Terry Funk from 1989.
Get to that later on. Terry Funk was also one of our very special guests in 1989. Terry had returned to wrestling in a big way. Ric Flair had won the World Championship for the 6th time from Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Terry Funk was one of the judges for that match. He came into the ring, laid Flair out, put him out of action for 3 months, and then he was signed to a big grudge match in what many people feel was the best wrestling card in many, many years, July 23rd, 1989. We had spoke to Terry Funk. It was the very first time I ever met Terry Funk, and that was in Philadelphia. And I asked him about why he attacked Flair, and Terry went off on me. And believe it or not, I was petrified during this interview with Terry Funk. And let's go to that right now. Terry, of course, a lot of controversy in the NWA since the attack on Ric Flair that took place not too long ago after Rick regained the World Championship. What motivated you to attack Flair?
What motivated me was I looked in the man's eyes and I realized that he was getting ready to sucker punch me. I told the fans across the United States that before, and I just got the first punch in on him. I Sundayed him, and that's exactly what he needed at that time. And right now, I am looking forward to July the 23rd in Baltimore when I have a chance at the World's Heavyweight Championship. And believe me, this is the most important thing that there is to me is the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship. If you want to look at a championship with a past, with a heritage, with some meaning behind it, with 100 years behind it, well, you look at the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship. And you look at the contenders, the top 10 contenders, which I happen to be one, John. Well, I am one of the top contenders, and I am going to meet Ric Flair for the World's Heavyweight Championship on the 23rd of July in Baltimore. And believe me, I want to make my career complete. I mentioned it to somebody before that my father passed away in my arms following a professional wrestling match. And I went to his funeral, and there were thousands of people there. But I went to that gravesite, this Memorial Day service, and there was only me and the West Texas Winds there. And I looked down at that gravestone, and I saw that name, F-U-N-K, Funk. And it was right then and there that I said to myself, I am going to make that name synonymous with wrestling forever. And that's exactly what I intend on doing, John. And that's exactly what's going to happen on pay-per-view. So if you people want to see something that is different, some title change hands, that's going to change hands, that has meaning in the world of professional wrestling, well, you watch that World's Heavyweight Championship change hands. And you want to talk about Ric Flair? You want to talk about who he is, what he's done? Yes, he has been a great champion. Yes, but we can't live in the past. Let's go on to the future. An old banana nose, old horse teeth, the old jackass himself doesn't stand a chance against me in the ring, nor does anybody else. And I'm not pulling your leg or giving you a bunch of crap. You are talking to the best athlete, best wrestler in the world today. Maybe I'm not the strongest. Maybe I don't have the biggest arms. Maybe I don't have the biggest chest. But I do have the biggest heart. And I do know where I'm going. I am going onward in this profession. And like I said before, I am going to make the name Funk remembered forever. And you, John, had better remember that. And all of you idiots out here are simple-minded people, I'd rather call you, that are listening to this drive show right now. Remember that name, Funk. Listen, it was the name Funk before anything in this world even became funky. That's right. My father was a pistol, and I'm a son of a gun, meaner than a rattlesnake, tougher than shoe leather, more dangerous than a hollow-eyed scorpion, middle-aged and crazy. That's right, crazy like a fox. That's why I've got this opportunity on the 23rd of July in the ring against Ric Flair, and you people are absolutely going to see a title change. That is a promise from me. The only way that I could be happier would be to have the match in Amarillo, Texas. Maybe I can figure out a way to get that match there instead of Baltimore and take it away from all you northern idiots.
Well, Terry, you just about said it all here.
I did say it all, John.
All right, so that's about it. That'll wrap it up, Terry.
If I want to talk some more, I can. Can I, John?
Sure. This is your time, sir.
Show.
2 hours.
It's your show.
2 hours.
Well, believe me, I could talk about Ric Flair and his faults for 2 hours.
I just wanted to say
he looks like
though.
Barbara Bush in drag to me, doesn't he?
Well, you have psyched him. Yes,
who do you think's going to win the match on the 23rd?
Well,
I know who you know.
I know you're a great champion. You've been a world champion. You come from a classic wrestling family.
realize right now I'm ranked number 10, and I realize in the count of 3 I can be number 1. Did you ever think about that? I can go.
Well, you've definitely proved your worth over the last 4 weeks.
I'm a mathematician, can't go from 10 to 1 in 3 counts, but a professional wrestler can.
Well, yes, that was Terry Funk, and believe me, that was a very scary interview for me because that was the first time I ever met Terry Funk, and he was pointing his finger in my chest, and he was very, very intimidating the very first time I met him. I thought he actually was crazy, but he is crazy like a fox.
Yeah, that was from show number 200 when we did the 200th special back in the day. But that's just an amazing piece of audio. It really is.
I love his just the way once he's going, it just all flows, and he doesn't sound scripted. He doesn't even sound like he's repeating something he said before, even if he has. Because there's so many people in their promos where they say the same kind of things over and over, and it's just tweaking these things. But for him, it just sounded so natural and off the cuff every time, no matter how similar it may have been.
Yeah, that was a magical summer. I mean, when he was the judge when Flair beat Steamboat, and he went into the ring to congratulate Flair and sucker punched him, and Powell drove him through the table outside, and it led to the Great American Bash, and it led to a whole summer of house shows with Funk and Flair on top, and it ended with the New York Knockouts with the I Quit match. It was an amazing run for Terry. And he kept going in his ECW days and everything he did in ECW and everything he did in Japan and all the false retirements, and him, would retire and then come back. And it's really hard for me to visualize the world without Terry Funk in it. It really is. I mean, and the last time I spoke to him was probably a year ago, maybe a little bit more, when I wanted to bring him on the program, and I was able to get his phone number and called him, and he didn't really remember me, and then he did, and then he didn't remember if I called him or if he called me, and I knew that it wouldn't be possible just based on his condition. But that last time I spoke to Terry, certainly in my memory, but more in my memory are the times that I got to spend time with him and to have him on the show and to do business with him and to honor him in San Diego when we gave him an award when we were there for AAA, and to give him another award in Chicago with Perro Aguayo, and then that whole angle, and just this work ethic. And I never forget in one of the ECW shows when he just he was busted open, and he was in the back, and everyone was concerned for him, and because he was an old guy doing what he was doing, and he'd kind of collapsed in the dressing room at ECW, and everyone was concerned. But before you know it, he's up and he's cutting a promo for the next time. So just a remarkable man and a great person, and can't say enough about him, man. And I look forward to us piecing together this tribute show for him. And it really is going to be just a lot of clips and us talking about him, but I think the people will really love it. And one special show to kind of play a lot of his appearances on the show and some of the best moments that we did with Terry Funk.
Yeah, I think it's going to be awesome. I know I've got a handful of questions to ask you about him specifically, and I'm going to wait for that episode as well.
Yeah, that'll be a bonus show for everyone, obviously, and we'll get to work on that in just a few days. But even before we get this show started, I do want to let everybody know. We'll get that Terry Funk special, but we'll be off for a couple of weeks because literally we have this show to cover. I'm going to New York. It's my nephew's birthday, and I'm going to be spending a week and a half. I'm going to spend 10 days up in New York. And so we won't do our regular shows. And then when we come back, we'll do that last September. I think we have 2 more shows in September, and I have 2 shows in November in '93, and then I quit. And then we'll just kick it back in with the August, September 1994 shows when I'm back at WGBB, and that continues on till the beginning of January. So it's almost going to be in real time, but we're missing a year. We're going right from the fall of '93. We're going to go right into the fall of '94, and there'll be a lot of guests, and we'll be back on GBB, and we'll finish this first run. And but there will be a couple weeks where there'll be no shows. I'll try to upload for the patrons. Some of those shows we'll be covering, so they have some content every week. And of course, we'll have the Terry Funk special for everyone to kind of listen to and honor the legend of the man Terry Funk, who was 79 years old and born on June the 30th, 1944, and left us today, the day we're taping the show, August 23rd, 2023. Rest in peace, my friend.
And even as a kid, like I said, I didn't get smart to the business for so long. I remember watching Hell in a Cell with Funk coming in, and that was the moment it all became so real. Because you're like, what's going on? This is bad. This is scary. And then you see Funk go out there, and you're so like, oh my god, like he was
concerned. They were friends, and he takes that bump off that top of that Hell in a Cell, and Terry, was very concerned. And then when Mick came off the stretcher, and Terry didn't want him to go back, and he climbed up, and I mean it was real. It was totally a shoot, because Mick is in the ring when he gets choke slammed through the top of the cage, and then Funk runs in the ring. And then Undertaker said to Terry, make sure is he still alive?
Yeah. And then Mick tells Terry to buy him some time, so Terry goes over to Undertaker, who choke slams Terry right out of his shoe. Like,
yes,
he's such an important part of that match that people don't seem to always think about.
I know it was a shoot, and that's the thing about it. It was because he was very concerned with Mick, as everybody was. I mean, that was crazy. And Mick and Terry, as much as they were beloved friends of each other's, and the things they did to each other's bodies, incredible,
insane.
If you have a chance, go on YouTube, find some of those matches that they did in Japan, and it's wow factor.
I know it's a little silly, but it's one of those little things that you just kind of love about how much Terry Funk is beloved. I play that game on my phone, Champions, and they introduce new characters all the time, and they had this poll just last week. Who do you guys want next? We have Chainsaw Charlie, New Liv Morgan, Indy Hartwell, or Cowboy Bob Orton. I voted for Chainsaw Charlie because I was like, I love Chainsaw Charlie. When I hit that button and you get to see the whole poll, he had over 90% of the votes.
No kidding. Less
than 10% voted for the other 3 combined. Everyone loves Terry, dude.
Yeah, and no one will ever forget him. And it's a sad day.
Yeah,
it's a sad day. We also, today we'll be reviewing September 11th, which that every time I hear even that date, September 11th, I mean, what else can you think of? But of course, this was 8 years before that tragic day, but it was September 11th. So when I uploaded the show and it was like September 11th, I can't even look at that day without thinking of what happened all those years ago.
It's insane.
But anyway, we're going to review it, and it'll be some humor at least. And we're bringing on one of our executive producers today as well for the third time. Joseph Holloway. Joe Holloway will be joining us today. So why don't we say hello to Joe? Joe, how are you?
Great, guys. Thanks for having me on again. Sorry I missed the tribute there, but very heavy heart. Love Terry. Love anyone that's a true wrestling fan. There's no way you can't. So, very sad day.
Well, we're going to be doing a tribute to Terry. We played one clip from the first show that the first interview I ever did with him. 1989. But we'll be planning a tribute to Terry Funk as a special program for everybody, and we'll be working on that over the next several days and get that up as quickly as possible. But Joe, it's good to see you. How's life? How's everything going?
Great. I'll tell you, it's always on the move. I love it. I think these times always remind me. I get a chance to get back on the air with you guys. I listened to this show and just just love. Continue to say best money I spend each month. Best money.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, you and Anthony Pyrus, as far as all those two executive producer levels, and some of the others that are in the producer level. I mean, we've invited them on, but we might have had one, but you guys are constant. So I appreciate your support, and we have a fun show. I mean, this was a pretty hilarious show for me. Just with those guys in the studio. I mean, it was just it was really a surreal broadcast.
You're a pro. You're a pro with that show. Are you to pull anything out? Wow.
Yeah. Marsh. I mean, that Marsh. I don't know how much work you had to put into it, but yeah, it was just kind of hilarious for me because it's like squeezing blood from a stone, I guess you call it. Couldn't get much out of those guys.
They are the literal opposite of Paul.
Yeah.
Like Paulie won't let you run your own show.
Right.
These guys couldn't be dragged into it. It was amazing.
No, they were there.
Yeah, I love the calls from the fans and the one-word answers.
Yes. Yeah. We'll get into all of that. But that was they were there for a paid personal appearance by one of our sponsors, and I had them overseas, Southeast Asia. I had them in Texas for my Texas show, and it was kind of funny because on Instagram, someone had actually put up the actual card from that Dallas show.
Wow.
And I hadn't seen it in such a long time. But I have it, and here it is. It was called Demolition in Dallas before we get to review this one. It's the lineup. And it's International Wrestling All-Stars, the return to All-Star Pro Wrestling in the Lone Star Estate. Main event, Jake the Snake Roberts versus the winner of a 12-man Battle Royal. Greg the Hammer Valentine and Cowboy Bob Orton against the Powers of Pain, Warlord and Barbarian. Conan against Kevin Sullivan with Woman in the corner, and Sensational Sherry was integrated into that as well. Diamond Dallas Page against Scott Putski. Wendy Richter against Medusa, and Mexican Midget Wrestling. So that was the lineup. That was crazy. I just saw it for the first time last night, and after so many years, and that was the original lineup because I remember designing it.
It's better than what they put on sometimes now.
Yeah, with 200 people there too. So that was crazy stuff. But anyway, I digress. Marsh, let's review the show from September 11th, 1993.
Yeah, let's start with the opening because I got a couple questions for you, but I want to set the scene.
Okay.
So we're going to have you open the show right here.
All right.
Good morning, everybody. How you doing? Welcome to another edition of Pro Wrestling This Week right here on 1440 WNYG. I am John Arezzi, and I'm here for the next hour talking wrestling with you. And we have a big day coming up for the wrestling fans here in the Long Island area. At just about 2 hours from now, we will be at the World Gym, which is opening up. The grand opening celebration is this weekend. And joining us today at World Gym, two very special guests who grace the luxurious studios here of the house on 109, 1440 WNYG. I'm referring to Warlord and Barbarian. They are known as the Powers of Pain, and they are here at the studio today. And you guys look just thrilled to be here.
Oh, John, we're real thrilled.
So we're just hanging out, hanging loose. We'll be taking your calls and comments right here. We got a lot of announcements to make today.
Good way to
They
start.
sound thrilled. They sound thrilled.
And he was using gimmick voice too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Almost the whole show.
Yeah. How thrilled were you to have him there?
I was fine. I mean, the sponsors bringing him in. I didn't have any. I never had an issue with Barbarian through the time that I knew him. He was a very soft-spoken guy. But Warlord Terry was always could be volatile at times. He really could, especially if he didn't have his food when he needed us to eat, or go to the gym when he needed to work out. And so some of the scariest moments for me on the Southeast Asia tour was just kind of like when we were stuck, when we're in an airport, or we're waiting for baggage, or waiting to do something, an interview, and he's, what are we going to eat? And he would just be like with his hands, and I'm like, soon.
Because I think Bruce even said in one of his podcasts that he used to keep a protein bar in his pocket in case Vince ever started to get really ornery. He sometimes would sneak him a protein bar, and it would help calm him. He should have done that.
Yeah. He had to eat many times a day, and his workouts were just legendary. I mean, he was massive. But having them in that little shitty studio in WNYG, in that little house on 109, and this was 3-4 hours before their appearance or whatever it was. It wasn't a happy situation.
Do you know how you got World Gym as a sponsor?
I probably just called them from a local ad in one of the local little shopper guides. It was a grand opening there. So grand opening was always good to reach out to when I was selling radio advertising. You'd scour the newspapers and look for grand openings and call them up and try to sell them radio advertising. And in this case, because they were a gym and I was doing a wrestling talk show, and Warlord and Barbarian would be kind of perfect guests, I was able to sell it through.
It's probably impossible to remember. Do you know if they would have asked for Warlord and Barbarian, or you just thought of the two biggest guys you had access
I just thought those would be the guys. I think, at that time, there's always Road Warriors, but they were not, seeing eye to eye at that time. And, it was, I had done business with Terry and with Barb, and they got a payday.
Yeah, you just came off tour with them.
Yeah, and I just got off the tour, right? And I just had the show in Dallas a few weeks back. So it was like, hey, you want to come to New York and do this thing? It's quick, one day, in and out, boom. And then getting them to come into the studio. I guess it was because it was a little early, and they weren't thrilled to be there.
Gotcha.
And Bruce wasn't really that thrilled to see them either, because of the shenanigans that were going on overseas with Barbarian ribbing Bruce constantly about wanting Bruce to sit on his lap.
It
was a rib, but it was a rib that lasted 2.5 weeks on tour.
The best guy.
And Bruce was about 150 pounds soaking wet.
Not today. You couldn't do that. Wow.
Well, no, you can. It's even talking about it, I hope I don't get in trouble.
Yeah.
Be fucking canceled before you know it. Excuse the French.
You do bring Don Liable on. He talks about how there's some sort of New Japan fashion show going on, but there was wrestling involved with it. It was insane. One of the big takeaways I had here was there was Sheik versus Terry Funk, where Terry's head was set on fire. And he talks about this picture, and I tracked it down, so I'm going to post it.
Oh, very cool. That's youtube.com/Pro Wrestling Spotlight.
Where he talks about how it basically looks like Terry's wearing a mask of fire. Like, it's just all in his face. Wow. And then you guys talk about Onita's exploding death match. And I love that Donnie goes, it's amazing how it's still called a wrestling match and they can even walk out of there. Like, it's so beyond wrestling at this point.
It was like hardcore stuff.
Yeah. Just incredible. Let's get to the capsule. There's a lot going on in this week in wrestling. And it was notable.
Morning, everybody. Well, leading things off, Dustin Rhodes is the new United States champion, as recognized by World Championship Wrestling. Dustin took the strap by winning the final match in the best-of-3 encounters, with some distraction by Ric Flair at ringside from Rick Rude. Now, the match will air tonight on WTBS. Thanks in part to climbing television ratings, WCW has promoted Eric Bischoff to Senior Vice President and David Crockett to Executive in charge of all television production. Gene Oakland has begun employment with the company, and capitalizing on a klutzy grand debut on The Last Clash, Shockmaster Fred Ottman has been transformed into what else? A klutzy character, Uncle Fred. Tomorrow night in Knoxville, Tennessee, the main event on Smoky Mountain Wrestling Show has two veterans ready to slug away at each other with the promotion's commissionership role up for grabs. Bullet Bob Armstrong, the former SMW commissioner, opposes Terry Funk. Now, these are the stipulations. If Funk wins, Jim Cornette assumes the commissionership. If Armstrong comes out ahead, he gets his former figurehead position back. This Tuesday in Las Vegas, Nevada at the Aladdin Hotel, the World Wrestling Alliance will hold their first television taping. The matches are being taped primarily for British broadcast. Former AWA announcer Lee Marshall will call the moves for TV. And Lanny Poffo, as the booker, will be using such people as Bob Orton, Jimmy Snuka, and Tito Santana as his headliners. From around the circuits today in Clementon, New Jersey, the Big Boss Man headlines for Dennis Carluzzo's WWA show. On October 28th in Amarillo, Texas, Terry Funk is slated to compete against former boxing champion Leon Spinks, and Jim Cornette and his Heavenly Bodies will wrestle Stan Hansen and Dory Funk Jr. And at the last WWF TV tapes, the Texas Hangmen, Killer and Psycho, last seen nationally with the AWA, were given a tryout. To the scrapbook files we go. This week in pro wrestling 17 years ago, it was in 1976 first in Los Angeles, Andre the Giant defeated Roddy Piper. In Miami, Florida, Ray Stevens pinned Hiro Matsuda, and Mr. Saito was victorious over Larry Zbyszko in San Francisco. And a happy birthday greeting goes out today to Paulie Dangerously. For Pro Wrestling this week, I'm Don Label reporting. Capsule time, 10:12.
Very ironic news capsule with so much Terry Funk news in it today.
Yeah.
Not the same thing. When I knew I was coming on and read the news earlier, I thought, wow, this is, it is ironic, and it's, again, I don't want to go too far into it, but it's my childhood. As we continue to get older, it's like, this is the first one. I worry about Flair, I worry about Hogan, but Funk was just as big, from a really invested into a character, type of, he was a character more than anything for me. And just, so when I heard this earlier in the week and went back and listened to it again, I was like, wow. And this is, it is ironic for sure.
It really is. It is. Did you see him much live, Joe, perform, or?
I had the opportunity, ECW, which was probably the best because it wasn't there long and it was small arenas. WCW, not much, obviously not as much as I would have liked to. And the part that I was always really disappointed, never got the credit that he was due. And then you hear later, he didn't want the title. He didn't want to travel. He didn't want that. So in those times where, that's all that seemed to matter. And I always would compare my friends to, if you're an NWA fan, then you're a wrestling fan. If you're a WCW fan, like when we got to that era, maybe much less. But when he became Chainsaw Charlie, a lot of my friends were like, oh, who is this? I'm like, and that would piss me off. Like, well, that's Terry Funk. And then when they acknowledged, like, I don't care if he's got nylons on his head, it's, that's Terry Funk. That was maybe the best part, even though he'd been there before, but it was the best part for my friends to be able to witness, like, who's this crazy guy? But then when you got past the Vince gimmick part of it, they fell in love with him for the same reasons I did at the time, which I think is just truly transcends who he was as a performer. And, that's the part that very few got, very few have that. Very few.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot of the younger fans, like even Marsh, getting to know and see him as Chainsaw Charlie. But he did have a really good run in the WWF in '85 and just after the big explosion took place. And one of the most memorable things I had seen was when notorious ring announcer Mel Phillips was doing the ring announcing and introducing Terry, and then he was taking Terry's garb to take it out of the ring, and he put Terry's cowboy hat on his head, on his own head, and Terry beat the crap out of him on TV.
I read about that.
Yeah, the video is out there. I mean, he just beat the living daylights out of Mel Phillips.
That's a man.
Yeah,
Really?
Terry, definitely. I mean, and he had a great run as NWA champion. I mean, he was, he did it all. What a family! What a great wrestling family. His brother Dory, who we send condolences out to, and his dad, Dory Senior. I mean, I guess it's gonna be. I'm gonna be flashing back to Terry throughout the show. I think because I can't comprehend.
Yeah, if I can add, one of the most confusing things for me as a wrestling fan as a child was when and not a child, it's probably a teenager, but when he turned on Flair with after the best of three and with the pile driver, it's like you didn't see that at the time. Like were both two heels. It's like, wait a minute, who do I like? I love to hate the anyone Sting and that whole that portion of it. But then when you have Funk and you had Flair, I was pissed. Like, I like you both, and now what are you doing? And I recall, I talked to a friend today about Terry passing. I recall being mad that they did that. And now looking back at it, it was the best thing that they did in booking.
Yeah, it turned Flair babyface. It brought Terry back in a very believable way. It was a shock and a surprise. And it was the best summer that NWA had probably to this day.
I could not.
It was what a summer it was with Funk and Flair and everything that happened that summer.
And when you listen to Flair talk about the honor of the I Quit match and Funk to do that for him, I mean, that's the part that I love about that era and about everything that I hate about the Hogans and the Halls and the Nashes and what destroyed that company is what made those two great. I mean, they didn't care. They did it for the business. That's what I love about Funk.
Yes. Genuine love.
Yes.
And it's not a total shock that there's so much Terry Funk in. And I was kind of mentioning to you before even you came on, he was such a big part of your life and your show for so long. You and Donnie covered everything he did, not necessarily because it was typical newsworthy. It was Terry Funk, and you guys thought that was news enough.
Oh, just to mention Terry.
Yes.
Anything about Terry is news.
Yeah. Terry Funk had an opening match in Japan in this thing or whatever.
It's like, everybody. Everybody wants to hear about Terry. And of course,
Yeah.
I was always wanting to hear whatever I could about Terry.
Well, because you also knew he never phoned it in. No matter what he was doing where, you knew that was worth tracking down and watching 100% of the time.
Absolutely.
And I do think one of the things that people don't credit Terry enough in the Chainsaw Charlie gimmick is it just undoubtedly proved that it factor that you couldn't get through anything. People like Joe just said, I was introduced to him that way, and the more I saw him, the more I wanted to see him, and the more I learned about him, the more I loved him. And it was like he shone through that in every way that it's just like I look at it with fondness. I'm like, Chainsaw Charlie was awesome because Chainsaw Charlie brought me Terry Funk, Yeah. So
yeah.
But see, it was also Paulie's birthday, and you guys were gonna have a big party at Fuji Tropicana.
Yes, in Manhattan, and I think I was going to that. I went to that.
Yeah, you wouldn't have missed that.
No, I kind of remember the club. I mean, it was a long time ago, but I was there.
Yeah, I can't imagine a Paulie birthday party in that era. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's a lot of. He was such a big part of the nightclub scene. Obviously, even as a kid when he ran the publicity for Studio 54. I mean, and promoted Bam Bam Bigelow's very first match at Studio. It was at Studio 54. So Paulie was involved in that nightclub scene, and he was a fixture at the China Club in New York City and Fuji Tropicana. I mean, he was a club dude, man. He loved that nightlife.
And he was between big companies. Right now he's doing the ECW thing early on. Doesn't have to worry about anything coming down from him from
No.
Turner or anything.
Won
you know?
lawsuits, got paid handsomely on the times he sued, won his lawsuits. And so he was living it up, and he was still a young, very young man, just having the time of his life.
So cool. One other bit of news there. Eddie Gilbert was booted out of ECW, and Kevin Sullivan was going to take his place in the main event. You told Donnie to call Eddie to get information on it, and you said he doesn't talk to me anymore. Do you remember having him falling out with Eddie?
Yes. And it was, I was pissed off at him because of the convention in 92 when I brought him in for that. And then it was like he wanted to be part of the AAA. I mean, it was just kind of, but in 92, I mean, he was fucked up at my convention. I mean, he was on drugs, and he was, and he was moody, and it wasn't a good experience. And I knew Eddie since he was a teenager. Mm. So yeah, if I said that on the air that he didn't talk to me anymore, it was fallout from that, and then fallout from him maybe wanting to go to Southeast Asia, and I was just kind of afraid because of his demons to do anything with him.
Wow, it's a bummer. But I mean, well, you don't have to get into details on that. The other thing that I thought was cool in the capsule that we didn't cover yet was Shockmaster is now Uncle Fred. Put him in this weird working jumpsuit. So funny.
I watched that video a couple times since we talked about it, and I still can't believe how horrific it was.
It's incredible. I watched that and this Uncle Fred thing. Remember, we had Anthony not that long ago who said that Shockmaster stayed around for a while.
Yeah,
they called him the Shockmaster, Uncle Fred. But he was out there as Uncle Fred. It still just said Shockmaster. That's why we don't remember him coming out there like that. Like, they switched him up.
Yeah, I tried to erase that from my memory, I guess, and I did successfully.
So good.
Do you remember that, Joe?
I do. That whole era was pretty forgettable. I mean, it was just watching like how you can the highlight. Just if there was a mistake they could make, and some of it, I mean, you can't predict that they're gonna have the piece of wood there and he's going to trip over it and go through. That's just bad luck. But you also create your own bad luck with bad gimmicks and such. And I think
that was crazy with even the Ole Anderson voice. I mean, and it was just kind of like with Sid, and then they all looked scared of him. I mean, I was like, just don't even air it, erase it. I don't know if it was live or not.
So that's what I always wondered, was they had done that in a lot where it wasn't live. And I even recall like watching it in, during that era, like, why did they put that on there? That's horrible. And
it would have been easy just to edit it.
Yeah.
Make believe it never happened and try it again, or just say scrap it, do something else with them.
The most remarkable part is how many people are involved.
Yes.
There's so many people involved and no one stopped it.
Big names. I mean, like big names, like the top tier guys.
Yeah. And no one was like, not doing this, That's what was remarkable to me. I'm watching everyone involved just being like, none of you stepped into Eric Bischoff's office and said, there's no way we're doing this. It's insane.
It was almost as bad as the Ding Dongs, maybe worse.
If only they had that bigger bell.
That's it.
This is your first little sit down with Warlord and Barbarian. What I like about this show is that there's a number of times you're doing the show and then you ask them to weigh in on something, and I had forgotten they were on the show, and I go, oh shit, yeah, that's right, there they are.
They're there, just sitting there. They were sitting not even next to me. They were kind of in back of me.
Really?
And that's why I was just kind of like, I was in a goofy mood because I was like, what am I doing with these guys in here? They don't want to be here. And I was just trying to make light of it, and I was laughing like the whole time.
How many mics did you have in there?
I had my mic, and then there was the guest mics, of course.
What? Okay.
Yeah.
They were not sat near the mic. You can hear them move to sit up and
get the
mic
right.
every
They
time.
were like, oh, like it's sitting in back of me in a way. I was like,
So then they would just like walk over, do the thing, and then
Yeah,
walk
then
back
they
down
would
and
just
sit
lean.
over.
They would lean forward because it was such a small little studio. It was just tiny. They just all you had to do was lean over.
Yeah, they're two pretty small men too.
Yeah, yeah, it
To
was
be comfortable.
yeah.
Well, this is Warlord and Barbarian. This is you getting the scoops.
Here with Warlord and Barbarian, and guys, here on Long Island, this is a place that you've been to many, many times before, working at the Nassau Coliseum, and happy to be back here in this area. At least
Love to be back in New York, John. It's a great place.
It's a good place to be, and today, of course, you'll be hitting the World Gym. Any
Another
workouts?
gym.
Any workouts scheduled?
They better be ready for the weight that we're going to be using today.
So you guys are also down in, I know you live down in the Tampa, Florida area, and there's an influx of a lot of wrestlers who live down in that area, beautiful Florida.
Everybody loves the weather, John.
And, of course, you affiliated down there. I don't know if you want to talk about it or not, but you may be getting into a venture which is going to help some up-and-coming guys trying to break into this business.
Well, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, the British Bulldog, and myself, the Warlord, we're going to be starting a wrestling school down in Tampa probably around November 1st coming up. So anybody real interested, I'm going to have things coming out real soon to all people that they'll get to know right where it's going to be at.
Well, if you are interested, we will certainly let the people know where to get in hold of you down there in Florida when you're ready to start that venture up, because there are, in this country, there needs to be some quality schools with professionals who have been in the business and have been in the ring and out of the ring and around the world, and guys like yourself and Neidhart and Davey Boy showing people the way as far as getting into the business. That's a pretty good thing for everybody.
It's a great opportunity for anybody who wants to become a professional wrestler. You got three guys that are top of the best.
And we will keep you guys informed out there on what's shaking. Now, we're also going to be taking phone calls here in a little bit for Warlord and Barbarian, the Powers of Pain. And I had the opportunity to work with you guys for the first time overseas for the International Wrestling All-Stars. And you are the IWAS Tag Team Champions, and assumed a little bit of a different role overseas where the fans, which was a little bit different here in the United States, we're cheering you guys more than booing you. You became fan favorites over there, and you had some wars with Greg Valentine and Bob Orton. How does that feel as far as a different light being shown on you overseas as far as getting the cheers of the fans rather than the boos?
Well, John, it's a little bit different. But people overseas, they love the size and power, and that's what we give them, and that's how come they like us.
And Barb, you're just sitting there and contemplating signing autographs today, I guess, right? Oh, yeah. You and Bruce took a liking to each other overseas. You developed a pretty strong friendship.
Oh, yeah. I really had a good time with Bruce. So today I will sign more autographs as long as Bruce sit by my side.
Okay. Bruce, you'll be hanging out today with us at the World Gym, so... You watching football today? Oh, okay.
I'll sign more autographs as long as Bruce sits by my side.
I mean, that was going on for 2.5 weeks overseas. It really was hilarious, and everyone was in on the joke.
It was so good. You're like, Bruce, you'll be there with us, and you just know he's behind the glass. Just
nope. I'm watching football. I was just trying to figure out who Warlord reminded me of with his answers, and he sounded like one of the Power Twins with a little rougher voice, because they'd always give like a 1 or 2 line answer, and that would be it, and not very intelligent.
So when I listened to it the first time, I went back and I thought, what if this was a Saturday Night Live skit? Like this would be.
It could have been.
It just could be. So when you listen to it a second time, as reimagining as a Saturday Night Live skit, it's hilarious. It's even more funny. Then when you throw in the "as long as Bruce is sitting by my side" part, I'm like, oh wow. So I got many laughs out of that the second time through.
Yeah, Barbarian meant a few words, but each sentence was always impactful and hilarious.
They almost were caricatures of what the public's view of meathead wrestlers is.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Grumpy voice who doesn't know how to say much,
we're the top of the best, or however he said it. I was like,
they were never good on promos. Those guys, very impressive to look at, but promo wise,
And wasn't their manager Mr. Fuji
in the WWF?
Yeah,
I believe so. Yeah.
So that wasn't a ton of promo there either.
Yeah, I had Paul E with them in Southeast Asia, which was kind of cool. At least Paul E knew how to cut a promo.
Right.
That's true.
Fuji,
Yeah,
Fuji and Powers of Pain.
Yeah. So you do end up running your ads about World Gym's grand opening. This is where you talked about EVD. You said,
okay,
we were supposed to start back on EVD tonight. And he goes, but that's not going to happen. So you said you're going to be back on in 2 weeks. Next week you're going to Philly, and you guys are going to go back out the week after. Or you're going to be back on EVD the week after. And again, you're going to be for like 6 weeks, half-hour shows.
Yeah.
Something like that. I don't know if that
wasn't coming together, man.
Yeah.
Just had all the finances, for Weekend of Champions coming up. It was like this incredible pressure on me financially at this point.
Maybe I'm off. I was just getting the impression that World Gym was going to fund both shows. They were sponsoring both.
Well, this was, it's always a test when you're doing a big promotion with someone. And if it's a gangbuster, thousands of people or whatever, hundreds and hundreds of people showing up, then you could do bigger things with a sponsor. But if you don't have the turnout, then they're going to say, I'm not, why am I wasting my money? And the turnout for World Gym might have been okay, but it wasn't anywhere near a huge success. Yeah. And as I always say, limited in the coverage area for WNYG. It's not like I was promoting this on EVD or even GBB, where the signals were just not even comparable to what NYG was blasting out there from their transmitter.
Yeah. Because you are doing a bus trip to Philadelphia, you talk about the card that's going to be on it, and you bring up the Headhunters, and you ask Powers of Pain to weigh in on what they believe in the Headhunters, and it's fascinating.
Now, direct from the Wing promotion over in Japan, the Headhunters will take on Miguelito Perez, that is the son of the legendary Miguel Perez, and a mystery partner. And that'll be a barbed wire baseball bat match. Now, if you haven't seen one of those, or if you did see some of the tapes from Japan, this is going to be a brutal one, folks. And the Headhunters, we saw them in Philadelphia when we were there last month. And these guys, they look like miniature Abdullah the Butchers. I don't know. Have you ever seen them work?
Never seen them.
These guys are stout. They look like miniature Abdullah the Butchers, and they do moonsaults off the top rope onto their opponents. Pretty wild.
They're too much for me, then.
So they'll be there also.
You're selling it, man. At this point, I'm like, you're a pro's pro. You're just,
I just was so dumbfounded that I had to laugh after every time they said something, because I was just like, I couldn't believe that it was almost like pulling teeth. And it was also, I'm live on the air. I'm like, how do I get more out of them? And then I just say, screw it. What am I going to do? And that's why I was just so I was insanely jovial in my laughter and the way my mood was. Cause it's like, I'm stuck with it. There's nothing I can do about it, and make the best of it.
You seem like you were tickling yourself with it, like you wanted to rib yourself. Like, let me bring them in, and then when they delivered the way they did, you're like, "Yep, perfect." Just
you also you have to be like, I can't piss these guys off. So
no,
there's a fine line of where you can be at that point. But Anthony brought up a point before, like you sounded tired, and before that is quite the opposite of where you are here. Here it sounds like you are hitting your stride. You're happy, and I'm excited listening to this because this is you.
Yeah, I was on. And you got to look at it this way. The last couple of shows when I was in Los Angeles, there was a 3-hour time difference. So that was early in the morning. And I was definitely, you could tell it in my voice. And who knows what I did the night before. in L.A. So I might have, I did some hot all woman wrestling. I don't know if it was that night or after the Triple Show. Could have been that Friday night, and then of course in Texas. Knowing that I was, that day I was heading into a disaster with the promoter and all the talent and what's going to happen, and there's no tickets sold, and we're screwed. I mean, I wasn't up. I was, please get me out of here. And to be back in the studio at WNYG, even with Warlord Barbarian sitting in back of me, not getting any responses from them, it was just kind of hilarity for me. And it was like, and I was up.
Yeah, it was good stuff.
It was great. You cover a news story about NBC and WWF, which I thought was pretty cool, given where we're at today with NBC Peacock being one of the biggest deals they ever struck.
Yeah.
So I'm going to play this clip of this news.
Okay.
An article that appeared in the Daily News a couple of days ago. This is a quote. NBC yesterday denied it acted inappropriately in researching the WWF for its primetime magazine show called Now. It's a new show hosted by Katie Jurek and also Tom Brokaw. They've been putting together a piece for the last several months. The WWF claims NBC has been in cahoots with an investigator in the U.S. Attorney's Office leading a grand jury inquiry into the WWF. In a report in a magazine called the New York Observer yesterday, the WWF alleged that an NBC producer has received confidential material from the investigator in the case. The WWF notified NBC of the allegations. The network's spokesperson investigated and found the charge to be untrue, said the NBC source. And their quote was, "When someone doesn't like being investigated, they cry foul." So that investigation is still ongoing, and now NBC and the WWF exchanging legal letters. So this thing seems to be coming to a head pretty soon. And, of course, we'll be keeping you updated on the situation right here at the program.
Yeah, that is crazy because NBC and Vince McMahon had such a great relationship with the Saturday night main event show, and Dick Ebersol was a huge supporter of the WWF. And, this was and this news, this was a different division. It wasn't entertainment, it was news. And Katie Couric. And I remember the launch of that show. I don't know too many details about the actual piece that they were doing, though. Don't really remember it.
So do you think Vince felt slighted because they had done such great business together up till then?
Yeah, but his world was crumbling around him anyway. So I guess he felt slighted for sure because of the long relationship he did have there.
I wonder if it has to play a role in why it was so long before they ever did business again.
I mean, it's if you can make money together, bygones are bygones.
Yeah.
Figured that out, how to make the money.
Exactly.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting, of all things to hear on this, knowing that NBC is like the exclusive licensee of WWE at this moment. I was like, wow, we've come a long way.
Yes.
The next news bit you had made a bunch of clarity for us. Remember, we were trying to figure out what was going on in Vegas last week?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, now we know. There was a new board of directors for NWA that was created in a conference being held in Vegas. So this is that news recap of it. And again, you get the wise words of Warlord weighing in on it.
Time. Another big story which we were following last week, we'll touch upon it right now. The NWA, a new board of directors has been created at the convention for the NWA last week in Las Vegas. WCW has resigned their affiliation from the National Wrestling Alliance, effective immediately. What that means is that for the upcoming title match between Ric Flair and Rick Rude at the pay-per-view next Sunday, the NWA name will not be used anymore. There's a big discrepancy on who gets the title or not, that big gold belt. So a new board of directors was voted in, consisting of Dennis Carluzzo from New Jersey, Jimmy Crockett, and also promoter Steve Ricard from New Zealand. Also present at the meeting was Bob Tobrich, who was the NWA attorney representing the NWA members, and Paulie Dangerously was also there. So a lot can be looked into this as far as what will be happening in the future with the NWA, but I really feel that with Jimmy Crockett's affiliation with the new World Wrestling Network, they are reaching out to several different independent promoters around the country to join an allegiance with the World Wrestling Network. And then I feel what is going to be taking place is that a tournament will be held to crown an NWA champion and tag team champions, and the independent promoters around the country will have opportunities to have the world champions for the NWA on the heavyweight and tag team divisions wrestle for them. So I think overall it's a good deal. Do you have any opinions on the NWA situation and just the fact that it looks as though now it may be getting back to the way it used to be years ago, where an NWA champion will now be traveling to different circuits and for different promoters? I think it's a good thing, personally.
The Powers of Pain love the idea. We'd love for Jimmy Crockett and all those people to come back. It gives us another chance to go out there and win some tag team belts together.
There you go.
There you go.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, that never happened, but because of Crockett, I guess, and Paulie being there was interesting.
Yeah.
I think he might have referenced it like in 1994 when he was on the show after the screw job of Carluzzo. That he said Carluzzo was at the NWA meeting in shorts and lying down on the. Yeah, so it's just interesting to get the answers that we were hoping for last week, and Paulie was maneuvering, man.
Yep.
Crockett, he's getting in with Todd Gordon. He's hanging around on my tours. He shows up in Los Angeles for the AAA show. He's plotting his future.
Definitely, right? Like, I was trying to figure out the little things we've heard here and there. Paulie was here. Paulie was there. Paulie showed up to this. He left your tour early. How far out did he know he wanted to make ECW out of?
That's a good
Eastern?
question.
You know what I mean?
Right.
He definitely was thinking about it. I mean, he always had a backup plan, right? Always looking like, in case this doesn't happen, I'm going to swerve and do this.
Right? Because remember, he was doing the thing in Texas till suddenly he wasn't?
Yep.
Who was he networking without up there? Yeah. I don't know.
Smart dude. Still doing it.
Yep.
Still doing it. Still in there. Still top player in this business.
Yeah. Incredible. Let's see. You get into some callers, and the first caller doesn't even drop his name, but he's asking you about Mike Tenay's show in Vegas, his radio show, and you think it's going to come back. You cover more about the NWA stories, and you said you were talking to Paulie about it, and that they're looking to do a TV taping soon with 2 cable networks that are looking to pick up the show. Mm-hmm. Sounds like Paulie knows a lot about that.
Yep.
Which is also interesting. Let's see. Bob from Point Pleasant. He asks the Powers of Pain, what was the best team that you guys ever worked with? And then Warlord goes, Road Warriors. And then that's it. That's all he says about it at all. And then the guy goes, oh, yeah, they were good. He goes, yep. And they're like, oh, all right. And then he goes, so then he asks you if Crockett's going to take people from WCW, and you think people are going to jump ship just to work with Crockett. But like you said, it never really took place. This one's a little bit of a longer clip. It's Rob from Medford asking you about ECW, asking the Powers of Pain about leaving WWF, which goes into a conversation you have with them afterwards, which this may be the most you get out of them. And I thought it was pretty good. And it was the only time in this whole show that it doesn't sound like Warlord. It sounds like
Terry.
Wrestling this week, and we're going to go to Rob. Rob, how you doing?
Hi, John. How's it going?
Very good.
I have 2 questions, one for you and one for the Powers of Pain. The one for you is, with the ECW next week, is that anything like the TWA used to be?
Well,
where it's like wild? And
it is wild. I don't know if you've been before to Joe Good.
ECW.
Well, it's about the same deal, okay? Joe Goodhart, obviously no longer involved, and he was with Tri-State. But Todd Gordon, the guy who runs ECW, was the backer for Goodhart when Goodhart did all those big shows in Philadelphia. And now they're bringing in a lot of big-name talent, and there seem to be – this is their first big house show next Saturday. And just with the types of matches they're bringing in and the talent they're bringing in from virtually all over the world, it's going to be another exciting promotion to really look at. They're already on television weekly in Philadelphia on Sports Channel, and they are rapidly becoming a strong force on the East Coast.
And one other thing I wanted to ask you about going with the bus trip. Now, say if I didn't want to go on the bus trip because I wouldn't be able to leave later, is there any way you could give me information on how to get tickets for that?
I tell you what you do. Give me a call, and I'll give you the direct line to ECW, and you can talk to the promoters there directly as far as your tickets go.
Okay, give you a call later on tonight on that number that you gave out before?
Yeah, 587-2861.
Okay, my question for the Powers of Pain is, what was the extent for you leaving the WWF, and would you ever go back?
The extent we left is that we're looking for other opportunities out there. We travel across seas and do a lot of work across seas now. And we're really not looking at going back with WWF, especially with Jim Crockett and all his promotion coming out. We might be looking towards going out that way.
Okay, thanks a lot.
All right, thanks for your call. 661-1440. You know, a lot of people feel, a lot of the wrestlers who were in the WWF for many years feel that there's no life after the WWF. There's no opportunity. And the more that I talk to guys who have left the WWF, they seem to be they just seem to be more comfortable with life itself, you know, because it's such a pressure cooker being in that company, traveling 28 out of 30 days every month. Now, you know, guys like yourselves can call your own shots and go where you want to go, and you don't have that pressure cooker atmosphere. Have you enjoyed leaving after leaving the WWF? Did it take a while to get adjusted from being on the road that many days a month?
John, I feel so much better. For about a year, I didn't know where I was. I traveled every single day, different city every day, did it for 4 years straight, 26 days a month. Now it feels great because now I got the opportunity out there where Jim the Anvil Neidhart, British Bulldog, and myself are going to be starting a wrestling school down in Tampa, Florida. I'm doing personal training, and it's so much nicer living life now. You can go work wherever you want and do whatever you want now.
And, of course, you have the opportunity to drive that big Harley around also down in Florida.
Love the hog.
And, yeah, when I was down there not too long ago in the Tampa area, we were shooting some promos for our first overseas tour for International Wrestling All-Stars. The atmosphere down there, just so many wrestlers that have migrated to that part of the country. And the atmosphere down here is just a great atmosphere. You know, you guys all seem to have a strong community. Valentine is down there, Medusa is down there, Hulk lives down there. So there's a number of you guys, and I'm sure you all get together for social functions or whatever. You know, it's kind of like a little clique down there.
John, it's great living down in Tampa, living in that beautiful weather. A lot of great wrestlers down there, and now we're even starting to do some of our own promotions down there now.
And with all the wrestlers down there, of course, it's easy to put on a show when you don't have to trans guys in and fly them into the specific area.
We got some of the greatest wrestlers there is down there.
He's stuck with the Buccaneers. Stuck with the Buccaneers. Now, you're a big sports fan. You enjoy other sports as well.
Love sports, John.
But
not the Bucks.
Not the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 661-1440 is the number to call. And Barbara's just sitting here. You seem to be quiet today. You just came back from what? From California and Japan. You've been traveling all over.
Yeah, I've been traveling all over. I like travel. You know, I hate to stay home. You know, stay home doing nothing, you know, and if I'm home, you know, I rather stay in the gym and stay home. And but it's good to be back, John. It's good to see you, and it's good to see my lovely partner. And every time I travel, you know, I look around, no wallet,
Well, you have another partner in Japan. You team up with King Haku there, don't you?
Yeah, I team up with King Haku there.
He's a tough guy, isn't he?
Yeah, he is.
I heard, like, legitimately in this business, as far as being a street fighter, there's nobody like Haku. He could, like, he's a tough guy.
Yeah, he is.
Heard some stories about him, which I wouldn't want to mess with him.
No, I don't want to mess with him either.
I wouldn't want to mess with you either, though.
But it's good to be back.
Yeah, you get what you could get, and I got a little bit out of them there in that segment.
Love sports, John.
Love sports.
Not the Bucks.
Yeah. And Barbara's like, I don't like being home.
Yeah, that was crazy. I'd rather be at the gym than home.
What's his home situation? What was his home situation like back then?
Yeah, I was like,
I'd rather go to gym than be home.
Yeah.
And then he drops and I miss my lovely partner.
Warlord.
Yeah, Warlord. What didn't
I
fit?
thought he was going to talk about Bruce again.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Yeah,
So,
I don't know.
So the WWF time, that was very short, like a year or so, right? It wasn't that long that they were in there, but it's pretty memorable. Am I wrong?
Yeah, they were pushed pretty heavily while they were in there. And Warlord did a lot of singles matches as well. Yeah. So I think Barb might have left first, and then Warlord stayed a little bit longer.
You think it was a timing thing? You think if the steroids thing didn't kick off the way it did, they'd have stayed longer?
It had. Yeah, that was kind of like they were the, not necessarily. Well, I don't know if Barb was doing them, but Warlord was just kind of like he was the poster child for steroids. Yeah. And of course, the journalist who's combating and talking about steroid abuse and the steroid scandals and who do I book on my freaking first tour? The poster child for steroids. He told me he wasn't going to take them, and then he gets arrested. Then we had him on because I had to bring him on EBD to talk about the his arrest.
Yeah. Wow. That was nuts.
Not my proudest moment, but it was nice to get to know them.
I was about to say, it sounds like you got along with them very well. Like they were good dudes.
What was the alternative?
Well, you didn't have to book them. I mean, like if they were also jerks. You know what I
No,
mean?
I wouldn't. Jerks were just abundant, and I certainly wouldn't work with them again if they were, But I was always a little fearful of Terry.
I was wondering, was there anyone else you were legitimately like, I don't want to work with them because I don't want to say scared, but like legitimately, you just don't know. They might fly off the handle.
I mean, well, Jake, of course, but it was like I had to. It was because of how important he was to everything that I was doing. But Eddie Gilbert, which we discussed earlier. But I loved Eddie. I was a dear friend of his for a lot of years. But other than that, as far as people I wouldn't absolutely use, I can't think of someone who was like I'll never work with that guy because he's such a POS.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to ask from the previous show, you said Kevin Sullivan brokered that deal to get the boys paid, but there wasn't a lot of. Was that a negotiation or was that it was just kind of ambiguous?
I think it was more ambiguous. I mean, it wasn't a negotiation. She owed us 50% of the money that and the show was sold for I think $30,000.
Yeah.
And so she paid 15 and still owed 15. And it was just kind of like Kevin was kind of like, if you cancel this, if you don't pay, it's going to get everywhere. It's going to ruin your reputation. You committed to something, you've got to fulfill it.
So that portion of it, what were the Sheets pissed off at you about that? Like I could see
that I shouldn't have done it. That I shouldn't have committed to the show
because it wasn't going to sell tickets, regardless of whatever he did. And they knew that, but there's no way John. Right. You know what I mean? Like John was taking advantage of them. I think, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
they thought I was just kind of. They thought I was just kind of conning this woman, and I didn't negotiate the deal with her. My agent did.
Right.
He's the one that put the deal together. And I always was optimistic. All right, if you bring enough stars in and it's a different promotion, you're integrating some of the luchadors, you're in Texas, you have some top tiered names there that they didn't get to see with Global. But, I wasn't expecting 200 people. I was expecting at least a couple of thousand people in that building.
Yeah. I mean, it was a hell of a card.
It was a hell of a card and one that I would watch today. I mean, it's not like for that.
But I got shit all over by everybody. From the Bruce Mitchells of the world, and Meltzer reported on it, and Wade, of course, and Alex Marvez, and all. It was just kind of like I was getting beat on. And I was getting beat on at that time because I kind of transitioned from radio host to promoter and the AAA. It was all this stuff And
but John, do you think the Sheets, it was ever, you have a radio show. They have Sheets.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're big time in New York and it's Sheets. I mean, I know now what it's turned into, but at the time.
It's not unlike cancel culture today. You know, people form opinions of you, and then in the wrestling business, anyone and everyone was always looking for a way to squash you. And that's in life and that's in entertainment. You know, people build you up, and then they love when someone crashes and burns. And I was well on my way to crashing and burning at this point of my career. So it's just society in general. People like to see, you achieve certain things, but they also love it when there's a good car crash that they can't take their eyes off of, and then can pass judgment on you.
I just think I'm fairly jealous of you. I think a lot of it. I do. I think in hindsight, when I look back, I mean, you got a show in New York. How big is that during that time? And they don't have that.
Well, I think there's two sides to it. One, they could always have downplayed it as John had to pay for it. It's not like someone was paying him to do it necessarily, but he was getting the sponsors most of the time. The other thing, too, is I think that the part that's most annoying from our side, me and Joe, is I'm sure that here's people who actively took advantage to be on your show, to promote anything they could as often as they could to get that extra reach. But behind your back, we're going to try and kick you on the way down and report that they know more than you and they're better than you anyway. And they want that bigger reach that you had, and they wanted for themselves, like that's what's frustrating. And I'm sure that they're nice people to you in general. And I'm sure Meltzer probably took it easy on you, but still said what he had to say.
Yeah. Dave definitely was one that took it easy. Like Dave never blasted me.
Yeah.
Dave respected what I did, and Dave respected the things that I was doing. And Wade was different. Wade and his team, they like this type of stuff.
Put the boots to you.
Yeah.
It's rough.
I mean, here's a guy, Wade. I mean, what do I can never get him to appear on this show. He just doesn't, he just ghosts me. For what reason? Yeah. Anytime he's ever asked me to do his, I would do it.
Yeah.
Even when I was not in the business, hey, you want to come on and talk about this? You want to talk about modern wrestling? Absolutely, Wade, of course. I gave him all my freaking shows to put up for his exclusive VIP people, I mean, didn't charge him any money for that or anything. And then, when several times I attempted to book him on this podcast, ghost me. Never did it.
That's frustrating too, because I do feel like there's a certain level of jealousy. There's a certain level of also he was on the come up while you were being pretty well known, and I think there's that like I'm gonna prove I'm better than, more than, or whatever. Mm-hmm. But like nowadays, it's easier for us to all say there's room for everyone.
I always respected Wade. I always obviously respected Dave, and I still respect Dave to this day. And maybe there was because I made amends with Vince Russo, and didn't.
That could be.
And that maybe Wade, who knows? I mean, but like I said, the way I live my life today is like, I don't hate anyone, and I want any relationship that I had that was bad. Life's too short. And to just give you something, I'm not going to mention any names, but years ago, I mean, I had a big falling out with somebody. And I covered it on the show, and there was a lot of heat, and I didn't talk to this gentleman 30 years, and he wrote something really bad about me, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna reach out to him, and I'm gonna talk it out with him, and I did. And I'm happy I did. And he retracted or took down what he wrote about me. And I'm taking him and his brother to a Met game next week when I'm in New York. I haven't seen him in over 30 years. And we both had a really good emotional conversation. I was never 100% I was not 100% right or wrong in that situation. And, his heart was in the right place. And it was just it was just something over all this time. There was this manifestation of bad feelings that he had towards me. And I needed to set it straight. Yeah. And apologize for anything that I did that would have hurt him. Yeah. So we're going to go to a Met game next week.
It's awesome.
With his brother. And I can't wait to see him because it's been 30 plus years. So that's the way I live my life today. I don't want enemies. And if there's, I'm kind of an open book, everybody walks through life in a way that you stumble along the way and you do some great things. And there's some things that you're not happy about yourself or proud of yourself. And at this point, this wrestling business, it really was a place that I was kind of like, I was not really liking myself towards the latter part, the last couple of years in the wrestling. I wasn't liking myself. I was like, I don't like who I've become in this business.
That's one of the things I think is really fascinating about just listening to your whole evolution from the beginning to the end of it, being able to go on this ride, is because the wrestling business in so many ways gave you life. It gave you purpose for certain areas. It was everything. And you had your heroes learn your names. Like, I can only imagine what it was like by the time that you had Terry Funk on your show every now and again. And he's, hey, John, you know what I mean? Like, that just had to feel so special. But by the end of it all, that same business was just bringing out the worst in you. It's just like this crazy thing.
Because that's the type of business. That's the type of business it is. I mean,
at
like
least
every
it was
business
in the 90s.
Every high profile business has the element of nastiness.
Yeah.
Even as pure as the country music business, when I got involved with the country music business and got to know so many of the artists and helped artists, I mean, there's still a level of nastiness in it, but it's different. It's competitiveness. It's not stabbing people in the back purposely. Yeah. And what I enjoy now, I mean, it's just like you say, your heroes know your names. Or, today when I do my baseball podcast with Gibby, and, I'm talking to Don Mattingly one week and Jim Palmer the next week and Jose Bautista and the rookie, Davis Schneider we just had on this week. And to just be able to talk to these people, it's a very unique experience. I've never been intimidated by talking to anyone. Hell, I fired Donald Trump on national TV on Deal or No Deal. I mean, never intimidated by anybody, but the wrestling business just does something to you just because of the nature of it.
What it was built on.
In the wrestling business, and I'm so happy I'm kind of removed from it and I could talk about it historically and kind of self-analyze myself from what I did. And that's why I wrote it, that's why the book is out too. I mean, it really discusses my life. But the wrestling business is a business where you really can't trust. And if you're doing business with someone, you just can't, you're waiting for the other shoe to drop too. And then when you start to become like this, I don't want to work anybody. Back in the day, I just didn't like what I was doing, and it was repercussions from even the Dallas show. I felt bad for this woman. I tried my best and did the interviews and tried to put together a good show, but I felt bad. And I'm like, you look at yourself and you're like, that was not good.
I really, if I can, real quick, that's the part that upsets me though, is because looking back at it, like your place in history, and I think there's some of us that are very sensitive to, and I think when I listen to Anthony, we're both like protective of you in such a way. And I don't know you beyond the show, but
appreciate
you do get a little bit protective about your place in this and how people have mistreated our perception. And after reading the book, go read the book, listen to the book. You get such a better perspective of what you went through and the hell you had to go through. And now to be able to come back, it's got to be therapeutic in a way, but also like there's other parts of me when I hear, last week, it pisses me off that the sheets are taken because you're a good man. And you said it, like the upset that the show didn't do well. Well, it's not like you weren't there trying to sell the show. It's just, so that's where I get a little protective of it. And I don't mean to, but I am still all these years later. It's like, come on. It's just bullshit.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, it's just it was always a roller coaster, and that roller coaster always found a way to crash.
Never enough tracks on those coasters.
Never. You always ran out of track, and you just slammed into the wall.
Well, let's run through a little bit more here. Mickey B walks by flexing his muscles because you said he's got a show tonight, and he was flexing for you. So that was funny. Dave from Brentwood calls in, asks you about the future of Ted DiBiase. He's in Japan, talks about LOD, Hawk in Japan. Mickey B sits down for just a flash in the pan to put over a show coming up next. Steve from West Hampstead asks, he asks the Powers Pain, hey, do you guys still hear from Paul Jones? No.
I think I asked him something about if he did well in Amway.
Yep, and that's what I was about to say.
He did really good, John.
Yeah, he ends up being a big guy in Amway. He's one of their top distributors or whatever. And you said, oh yeah, you guys talking about how he made a ton in Amway.
Yeah,
which is really funny. My dad did Amway when I was younger, so we had all sorts of weird Amway products around the house.
I live in Michigan, like 40 minutes away from the home of Amway. It's
yeah,
not quite as popular here, if you can imagine.
It's different now, from what I understand, but yeah, Amway is an interesting. I wanted to see a documentary on Amway, but the guy did ask a really interesting question about how much damage did an animal get on his eye when they did the weightlifting spot between them, and apparently it was a pretty significant real injury that he actually hit his eye on the corner of some weights and it pushed it back.
Yeah,
needed surgeries. Yeah, that was kind of crazy. I didn't even know about that. I'm gonna look it up, see if I can't find some crazy footage.
Yeah, it's probably out there.
Yeah, I imagine. And then you get this caller. This is the only caller clip I have today because it just stood out as a phenomenal call.
And you also can hear the whole thing on Patreon if you're a patron.
Yep, Patreons get the whole thing. But for everyone else, you get this one little snippet.
And we're going to go to Copeg now. Thank you very much, Bruce. Joe from Copeg, you're next.
How you doing?
Good.
I'd like to talk to the Powers of Pain, please.
They're listening.
How you doing, fellas?
How you doing?
Okay, whenever you need a manager that's better than Paulie Dangerously and all the other ones, just ask for me.
We'll give you a call.
My name is It, because that's what I am.
Oh, that's a heck of a name there, It.
Okay.
Thanks for your call, It.
Good luck.
Yeah, it takes all kinds, don't it? That was cut. It, the manager. It. Okay. Matter of fact, Bruce, I think Barbara's looking at you as far as to be a kind of a manager's role for him. Maybe you want to take him over to Japan on your next tour.
Oh, I think so, John. It'll be a great tour for me.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool. It.
I am It. Feels
it.
to me now like all of the, you see it so much, even Carmelo Hayes uses it, the I am him, I am her, that whole thing.
Yeah.
I am It sounds the same to me. It's all just so, I mean,
I am It.
Yeah. My name is It because that's what I am.
That's what I am.
Sure, Warlord and Barbarian is still trying to figure out what that meant.
They're trying to figure it out. And then you run out the clock with ads for World Gym. Although somebody does ask, or you ask them directly what their favorite place to wrestle was outside of the States, and they said England. And you put over the WWF. I thought it was really neat. You said that you had to give WWF credit because they have put wrestling on such an international atmosphere that you can do tours because there is interest, because they do have WWF on their TVs and no one else was doing that. I thought that was cool. But then that was kind of
They WWF global brand, and they went into countries before anyone else did, and they gave all these guys TV recognition and gave them opportunity.
Yeah.
And that was that, huh?
Yeah, that was it. You're going to be at the World's Gym from 2 to 3.
Yeah.
I was trying to see if, knowing that it was just a grand opening, because I was trying to figure out if this World Gym had anything to do with the Kevin Sullivan, Ric Flair opening up a gym thing, if there was some sort of connection there, and that's why Powers of Pain were going. But there's nothing I can find, and if you don't recall that, then I doubt that you would have remembered if it was.
No, I was just thinking and trying to recall where I took them for lunch after the show, because we still had a couple hours, and I know how to get them fed. I probably took them to the Terrace Diner in West Babylon. Yeah, took a lot of people there over the years, but anyway, they had to eat. So,
Joe, was there anything when you were listening back to this that you had in mind you wanted to make sure you asked John?
Well, I wanted to definitely make sure I pointed out a few episodes ago when you had mentioned about the Paul Heyman and Rick Rubin's interview. Thank you for mentioning. I never would have heard that in my life. It's just not something I would have done.
Oh yeah, the podcast.
Yes, and that completely changed my view on a lot of things. So I appreciate you bringing that up. I just love that. So I wanted to make sure if I got back on, I just said thank you for that.
Yeah, and if anyone who hasn't heard it, it's up there. I mean, Rick Rubin's podcast with Paul Heyman was just off the chart. Really, really good. One of the best I've ever heard.
Certainly. So thank you. Definitely thank you for that. And then, through this episode, I think it was just as I'm listening and I'm starting to feel like, where is wrestling going at this time? Because it's like you're doing shows and there's not a lot in living through this. There just wasn't a lot going on. So it's just wrestling starting to fail us more than anything. There's not much to cover. It's just difficult to cover.
It was until ECW really started getting traction. And that's when people started taking notice. That's when the product started to change.
Yeah.
And you got to give credit to Paul.
Certainly.
And you got to give credit to everybody else who just try to mimic him. And then before you know it, it's NWO, it's Attitude Era, and it's Explosion, and I'm out of the business. I got out like right before shit started to happen in a good way. I got out. Yeah. I missed it.
What when you look back at that part though, as you're starting to transition out, like, did you know how soon did you know? Like, this is it?
It was just it was the Meal Moscaris plane ticket deal in the fall of '96, because I had been off radio and I was just trying to promote whatever I could and work with AAA some and do a bunch of stuff. But that was it. It was like, that's it. I'm done.
Right.
I have to get out.
And then, and real quick, this podcast, when did this come up?
What do you mean?
Well, to bring it back and do this podcast.
Oh, I mean, the first rendition of it was with Brian Last with, Pro Wrestling Spotlight Then and Now.
Yeah.
I had known Brian. I'd done a 605 Super Pod with him at any time he asked for me to come on and talk about a Mike Leno or Fred Blassie or and then we just started talking about starting a podcast because I had all the tapes.
Right.
So that lasted a couple of years, and then I talked to Conrad Thompson, and I got booted off Arcadian Vanguard, and then I started it up, and and this is the format that I really wanted to do, and I know we did it with Bob for several months, and Bob has found his niche with the Outdated Wrestling Podcast, which is really a unique look back in a way that only Bob can do it, school wise, and he's having a blast and it's doing good. And I'm happy for him. And I love Bob Smith. And, I really don't have any hatred towards Brian, with the exception of I'm still scratching my head. It's like, how did that fall apart? But, good things happen, with Marsh, getting introduced to Marsh by Nick Hausman. He brought us together, and as I was trying to figure out a way in the beginning of the year, what do I do? I needed to shake it up. I needed to get this type of format rather than what I was doing in the Bob Smith era.
Right.
So that's how this evolved, and I'm very comfortable with what we're doing now. That's why I'm thinking about when the run is over, starting right from the beginning again with Marsh and
Certainly hope you do. I'll be
yeah,
disappointed.
I think it's a different perspective.
Yeah.
It could be different clips. It could be other, Marsh's, his creativity, and I throw the ball to him. I don't tell him what clips to pull. It's like it's up to him. He's the producer. He's a creative director. So, and that's the same thing with Brian. I mean, Jason Nacarado, Lou Kippelman, and his team there. They're the ones that pull the clips, and then Brian would ask me the questions, and we'd listen to them together. So hopefully we'll be doing this for a long time.
I hope so. I really appreciate that. I only ask because where would we be without this? I mean, truthfully, I think the reach on this and just the look back, nobody's doing it. I know I say.
Well, there's no reach. I mean, it's people like you, and it's not like we're being heard by, we're always in the top 100 on the charts or whatever you want to call it, on Chartable. And, but I mean, the audience is a really, like my old shows, like NYG's audience and like GBB and EVD, who listen to what I do. It's an extremely hardcore audience that appreciates what the history was now from 30 years ago. But we don't have a massive audience. We don't.
Right.
And patrons, I was looking at our year to year, our patrons, my revenue's down on Patreon 40% since I started, it just is what it is. We're reaching who we're reaching because they love what I do, right, and they love listening to this. So, and you do it until no one listens. They tell you to go away, right?
No, that's not going to happen. I'll be listening. I think it's the depth of it. When I think of reach, I think it's the depth of what I'm learning from that time.
I mean, it just needs more. If I had, budgets for marketing and, but it's a dwindling audience anyway.
Yeah.
Just like the Madison Square Garden podcast that I do, the 50-year retrospective. I mean, how many people are alive that would even remember what happened at Madison Square Garden 50 years ago?
Right. No,
it's like those numbers are smaller than these numbers.
Right.
And I'm not saying we don't have numbers. We have numbers, but we don't have, we don't have top 10 numbers.
Yeah.
Like, Brian and Jimmy Cornette and Foley and Arn and Eric and all the Conrad shows, and we don't have that. We're a niche, but we have the best sound because of I could pull from 30 years ago, and I could bring all of these historic figures on it. Today, with the unfortunate passing of Terry Funk, I could say, let's get that clip from the first time he was on the show, and it's there instantly, and it's in the show. So, I mean, that's what we do. And I appreciate your support as always, Joe. And
again, I'm going to say, anyone out there, we got to get, $5 is ridiculous for what we pay for this. I love it. I mean, I can't believe.
And it's commercial free. You know, like if you're listening to Apple or Spotify, you have those insert ads. And even on YouTube, we're trying to monetize that. So there are ads. But if you're a patron, it's commercial free. And $5 gets you in the door. And $10 gets you the videos. And $25 gets you more. I mean, it's like, it gets you the films and all that. I mean, so it's like something for everybody. But for $5 a month, I mean, you can't go wrong with it. No, you really can't. I mean, it's like, do it. I mean, but I'm not going to shill.
No, I will.
It is what it is.
Damn it, I will. It's the greatest thing going today.
One of the things I'm excited to do when we pick it back up too is I've been spending a lot of my time that's available. I've been doing a lot more editing with audio specifically and figuring out how to like clean up stuff. I think we might be able to get some more clarity out of some of your older ones, especially some of the ones where they're like layered, a tape of an old tape.
Yeah.
Like I can't wait to start trying to get in there and try and remaster some of those.
And I want to do the college stuff too. I got the college shows. I mean, it's from 1975. I mean, my goodness.
Yeah. I think we're going to be able to get a better sound than we had before, like a better quality.
Cool. Well, we'll keep you updated on all that. And Marsh, I know you're always trying to find new and different ways to grow the audience and to make it sound and look better, and you do a fabulous job with that. So, listen, I know you have some things to do. I know we're probably overtime with you, Marsh, and Joe. I really appreciate you coming on again, as you've done now this third time. We'll bring you back again in just a few months.
Love it, guys. Thanks again for everything. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're quite welcome, my friend.
Thanks again.
Take care. All right, Marsh. Thank you too. I'm going to wrap it up and look for that Terry Funk tribute that we're going to be doing soon. So, what else can you say? Rest in peace.
Excited to put that one together, but not happy for why.
Exactly. All right, Marsh. To let everybody know where they could find you on social media and what you're working on, and then we'll wrap it up for today.
Yeah. You can find me on youtube.com/Queen of Carnage with Medusa. I got a really cool interview coming up with Heidi Lee Morgan, which is going to be cool. Obviously, I'm with you on YouTube, Pro Wrestling Spotlight. I'm on Wrestling on the Rocks, which we're doing a little more sporadically, but it's been a lot more fun to do it a little less religiously, to be honest. And then outside of that, you can find me on the socials, Marsh Ref on Instagram and Threads, and Ref Marsh on X or Twitter. And that's where I'm at.
Busy dude. Are you going to CAC or no? You're not going to CAC, right? You're going to.
I'm not going to make it. The thing that makes me the most sad about it is David Cantu. If he's there, he's in his 90s. I want to sit down. I might later reach out to Roy and see if he can't get me David's number and try and record just his life. He spent like 10 or 15 minutes talking to me about different things he'd done in the business, and all I could think of is, this needs to be down on something. Like,
right.
He spent time with me in the middle of the casino, just talking on the floor because I recognized him, and I was like, "Oh my god!" So that was my big concern, is that I don't know how many opportunities I'm going to have to catch him and be able to put a microphone in his hand.
Yeah, sometimes you never know, right?
Yeah. So we'll see. Maybe we'll do a bonus thing. But I won't be at CAC this year.
All right. Well, neither am I. I'm going to New York, spend my nephew's birthday with him and with my family. Haven't seen them in a long time. All right. Thank you, Marsh. And that'll wrap up this edition. I'm just going to not do the traditional close. I really just want to pay tribute to Terry Funk and have a moment of silence for the loss of such a legend and such a friend. And I'll miss you dearly, Terry. This is John Arezzi for Pro Wrestling Spotlight, and we'll relive more history with you next week. Rest in peace, Terry.